The fluorescent lights blurred into white streaks above her. Nadine felt her knees buckle first. Then her vision tunneled. Then gravity took over, and she was falling in front of 23 executives, 14 department heads, and the most dangerous man on the eastern seaboard. 3 days. That's how long she'd been hiding 2 fractured ribs, internal bruising that turned her torso into a canvas of purple and black, and pain so severe that breathing felt like swallowing glass. 3 days of pressing foundation into bruises. 3 days of oversized blazers to hide the damage. 3 days of crushing painkillers between her teeth because she couldn't afford to look weak. Couldn't afford to lose this job. Couldn't afford to let them see her break. But the body doesn't negotiate with bills. It doesn't care about deadlines or dignity or the $47.23 in her bank account. And on the 3rd day, in the middle of the most critical quarterly review of the year, Nadine Usher's body made a decision her mind refused to make. It gave up. She should have hit the conference room floor. Italian marble. Expensive. Unforgiving. Instead, she fell into hands. Massive hands. Tattooed at the wrists. Belonging to a man who hadn't touched another human being gently in longer than he could remember. Lee Min-woo caught her like she weighed nothing. Like he'd been waiting for her to fall. And in a building where his word was law, where his name was whispered like a curse, where grown men avoided his gaze, this CEO, this billionaire, this dragon of Manhattan, looked down at the unconscious woman in his arms and made a decision that would burn his empire to the ground if that's what it took. Some people call it protection. Others call it obsession. Nadine would learn to call it something else entirely. Now, before I tell you how a woman with a master's degree ended up cleaning toilets for the Korean Mafia, and how that decision saved her life, I need you to do something real quick. Look at the subscribe button. If you're watching this and you're not subscribed, you're basically reading someone else's book over their shoulder. Just hit it. It takes half a second, it costs nothing, and honestly, you're going to want to be here for what happens next. Smash that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I see every single comment. Every country, every city. Drop your flag, let me know you're here. Alright. Let's go back 6 months. Let's talk about how Nadine Usher ended up in that conference room in the first place. Nadine Usher stared at her phone screen at 5:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in January. $47.23. That's what stood between her and nothing. She refreshed the banking app. The number didn't change. Outside her Washington Heights apartment window, the sky was still dark. The radiator in the corner hissed and clanked, struggling against the winter cold. From the apartment next door, she could hear her neighbor's alarm through the paper-thin walls. Nadine set her phone down next to the Howard University diploma hanging above her tiny kitchen table. Masters in Economics. 3.9 GPA. Distinguished thesis on market inequalities in urban centers. Worth exactly nothing in this job market. She opened the cupboard. 1 package of ramen left. 4th morning in a row. She put the kettle on and opened her laptop. The student loan notification glowed on the screen, $127,000 balance. Payment due, February 1st. 19 days away. Another payment she wouldn't make. While the water heated, she pulled her only interview outfit from the closet. Black blazer from Goodwill. Black slacks with a small tear near the hem she'd stitched by hand. A white blouse she'd ironed 3 times, trying to hide wrinkles that had become part of the fabric. It's just cleaning, she whispered to herself, smoothing the blazer. It's just cleaning. But it wasn't just cleaning. Not at $23 an hour with benefits. Not at Hanjin Tower. Everyone in New York knew about Hanjin. Shipping company on paper. Something else in reality. The kind of business where delivery trucks moved at night and security guards carried weapons that weren't in any catalog. Nadine had done her research. 3 hours online the night before, reading old news articles, public records, court filings. Lee Min-woo, CEO. Investigated twice by federal agencies. Nothing stuck. His father built the company in the 80s. His grandfather had been something important in Seoul. The kettle whistled. She made her ramen, ate it standing up, checking the time. 6:23 a.m. Interview at 8 o'clock. Nadine put on her clothes, applied minimal makeup, and twisted her hair into a neat bun. Professional. Forgettable. Exactly what she wanted to be. She picked up her keys with the small pepper spray attached and her phone with its spiderweb of cracks across the screen. In the bathroom mirror, she looked at herself one last time. Survival doesn't care about your GPA, she told her reflection. The subway at 7:15 was packed with people hiding inside winter coats. Nadine stood holding a pole, watching faces, calculating odds. It was the economist in her. She couldn't help it. Everything was data. The woman across from her, designer bag, cheap shoes, prioritizing appearance over comfort. The man beside her, expensive watch, wrinkled suit, recent divorce based on the pale band of skin where a ring used to be. She got off at 42nd Street and walked 3 blocks to Hanjin Tower. 52 floors of glass and steel rising up like a monument to money and power. The morning sun hit it and turned the windows into mirrors reflecting the city back at itself. As Nadine approached the entrance, she noticed the security guard. Standard uniform, non-standard weapon. The slight bulge under his jacket wasn't a regular security handgun. It was smaller, flatter. The kind of thing people carried when they didn't want to be noticed carrying anything. The lobby was too clean. Too quiet. Wrong energy. Banks had marble floors and high ceilings, but they also had noise. Conversation. Life. This place felt like a museum dedicated to wealth. Look, don't touch, don't speak. The receptionist directed her to the 32nd floor. HR. In the elevator, Nadine stood perfectly still, aware of the camera in the corner watching her. Mrs. Park was waiting in a small conference room. Korean-American, mid-50s, with practical glasses and a navy suit that said competent, not fashionable. She had the kind of face that gave nothing away. Nadine Usher, she asked, not really a question. Yes, ma'am. Sit. The interview started normally enough. Experience? Office cleaning during undergraduate. Retail since graduation. Availability? Any hours. Completely flexible. Transportation? Subway. I live in Washington Heights. Why this position? Nadine had prepared for this. Don't mention the economics degree. Don't look overqualified. The pay is good. The benefits are better. I'm reliable, detail-oriented, and I understand discretion. Mrs. Park made a note. Her pen scratched against the paper, the only sound in the room. This position requires a confidentiality agreement, she said, looking up. Everything you see or hear in this building stays in this building. Is that going to be a problem? Nadine's heart rate increased slightly. Her face stayed neutral. No, ma'am. Good. Mrs. Park closed the folder. You'll work the day shift, 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. You'll be assigned to floors 40 through 52. Those are executive floors. Different rules apply. What kind of rules? Mrs. Park's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes sharpened. You don't speak to executives unless spoken to. You don't enter occupied offices. You don't discuss anything you see with anyone, including other staff members. You report any unusual activity to security, not to gossip about it. Nadine nodded. Understood. One more thing. Mrs. Park leaned forward slightly. Mr. Lee, our CEO, occasionally works unusual hours. If you encounter him, you address him as Mr. Lee or Sir. You don't make eye contact unless he initiates conversation. You don't ask questions. Don't make eye contact. Nadine had grown up in Baltimore. She'd walked past drug corners on her way to school. She knew what "don't make eye contact" meant. It meant the person at the top wasn't someone you wanted to notice you. Understood, she said again. The pay is $23.15 per hour. Medical, dental, 401k match after 90 days. Uniforms provided. Background check required. Start date would be this Monday. The salary was nearly double what Nadine had made at her last job. It would cover rent, student loans, maybe even food that didn't come in a package. I'll take it, Nadine said. Mrs. Park's expression didn't change. She pushed a stack of papers across the table. Sign these. All of them. Last page is the confidentiality agreement. It's legally binding. Nadine signed without reading. She knew what she was agreeing to. Silence. Invisibility. Looking the other way. $23.15 an hour bought a lot of looking the other way. Monday morning, 5:30 a.m. Nadine stood in the employee entrance of Hanjin Tower, wearing the uniform they provided. Dark gray slacks and button-up shirt with Hanjin Logistics Group embroidered on the chest. Practical shoes. Hair pulled back. An older Korean woman with a name tag that read Sunhee, lead custodian, handed her a badge on a lanyard. Facilities maintenance, floors 40 to 52, it read. Nadine's photo looked tired. Probably because she was. You new girl? Sunhee asked. Yes, ma'am. You follow me. I show you. The service elevator smelled like cleaning supplies and cigarettes. It moved faster than Nadine expected, making her stomach drop. Sunhee didn't speak until they reached the 40th floor. Executive floor's different, she said as they exited. Special rules. Mrs. Park explained, Nadine said. Sunhee shook her head. Mrs. Park explained company rules. I explain real rules. She led Nadine down a quiet hallway. It was 5:45 a.m. The building was still mostly empty. Rule 1. You see wrong thing, you clean it up. No questions. What's a wrong thing? Blood. Broken glass. Things not supposed to be there. Nadine's stomach tightened. Blood? Rule 2. Security cameras for regular employee, not for executive floors. No cameras in executive elevator. No cameras in Mr. Lee's office. Remember that. No cameras. Meaning no record of what happened there. Rule 3. Mr. Lee very particular. His office cleaned before 7 a.m. or after 10 p.m. Never when he there. And if he is there? You turn around. You come back later. You never disturb. Sunhee handed Nadine a cart loaded with cleaning supplies. You start here. 40th floor restrooms, executive offices, conference rooms. Work your way up. Top floor, Mr. Lee's office, you save for last. Always. Understood. Sunhee's expression softened slightly. You smart girl. I can tell. Be invisible here. Is safer. She left Nadine alone with her cart and her thoughts. Be invisible. Don't ask questions. Clean up the blood. Nadine pushed the cart toward the first office. The wheels squeaked slightly against the marble floor, the sound echoing in the empty hallway. She was walking into the dragon's den. Eyes down. Voice quiet. Invisible. She just hoped the dragon wouldn't notice her. On her first day, Nadine learned 3 things about Hanjin Tower. 1. The elevators to the executive floors had no cameras. 2. The security guards answered to someone other than the security manager. 3. There was a man on the 52nd floor that everyone whispered about but no one would name. She also learned a fourth thing, though it would take her 5 months to understand it. Someone on those executive floors had already noticed her. And in a building where being noticed usually meant trouble, Nadine Usher had just become the most interesting person in the tower. Nadine figured it out on day 4. The trick wasn't to be unseen. It was to be seen, forgotten, and dismissed in the same breath. True invisibility wasn't about hiding. It was about being so predictable, so expected, so perfectly unremarkable that people's eyes slid right past you. Like the water cooler or the potted fern in the corner, present but unworthy of attention. By week 2, she had mapped the entire rhythm of Hanjin Tower in her mind. 5:30 a.m., security shift change. The night guards who carried themselves like soldiers handed off to the day guards who smiled more but watched just as carefully. 6:15 a.m., maintenance crew arrived. Mostly middle-aged men from Queens who spoke in short sentences and never looked up past the 40th floor. 7 a.m., first wave of assistants. Young, nervous, carrying coffee that wasn't for them. 7:30 a.m., middle management. Badge swiping, newspaper folding, coffee drinking. Conversations about sports and children's schools. False laughs at bad jokes. 8:15 a.m., junior executives. Designer shoes. Phones already to ears. 8:45 a.m., senior executives. No phones. No hurry. The building adjusted to them, not the other way around. 9:30 a.m., the Koreans who weren't on any org chart. Men with expensive watches who spoke quietly in hallways and made senior executives straighten their spines. And through it all, Nadine moved like water. Present, essential, unnoticed. You learn fast, Sun Hee told her at the end of week 3. They were in the supply closet on the 43rd floor. Sun Hee was counting inventory. Nadine was reorganizing the closet, her third improvement to the cleaning system that week. I'm just doing my job, Nadine replied, shifting bottles of industrial cleaner into more logical groupings. Sun Hee snorted. Job is clean toilet. Not make spreadsheet for supply closet. Nadine froze. The paper in her hand, the inventory tracking system she developed, suddenly felt like evidence of something she shouldn't have done. Is it a problem? She asked. Sun Hee studied her for a long moment. No problem. Just interesting. You think like manager, not cleaner. I can stop. No. System is better. More efficient. Sun Hee closed her inventory clipboard. Just remember. Smart is good. Too smart is noticeable. Nadine nodded, understanding completely. Noticeable was dangerous. Hanjin Tower had 3 hierarchies. The first was the official one. The org chart printed in the company directory that Nadine memorized in her first week. CEO Lee Min-woo at the top. C-suite executives beneath. Department heads. Senior management. Middle management. Regular employees. The second was the practical one. Who actually wielded power? Which executives could make things happen with a phone call? Which managers could approve expenses without additional signatures? Which assistants controlled access to which executives? The third hierarchy was the invisible one. And it took Nadine 2 months to start mapping it. The Korean men in suits who never wore name tags but made security guards stand straighter. The conversations that switched to Korean when she entered a room. The unmarked office on the 47th floor where people entered looking confident and left looking shaken. And above it all, Lee Min-woo. The man she'd never seen but whose name caused every conversation to drop half an octave. Mr. Lee is very pleased with the quarterly results. Mr. Lee feels we should reconsider the Dubai expansion. Mr. Lee will be in the building tomorrow. That last one always sent a ripple through the entire tower. Like the first tremor before an earthquake. Nadine had cleaned his office 12 times. Always before 7 a.m., as Sun he instructed. His desk was impeccably organized. 3 monitors. A single photograph in a silver frame showing a traditional Korean family, parents in formal clothing, 2 young boys standing stiffly in front. A collection of economics books that made her pause the first time she saw them. Several were texts she'd used at Howard. Once, she found a Wall Street Journal open on his desk. Red pen marks highlighted an article about market inefficiencies in Asian shipping routes. The same topic as her master's thesis. She did not look closely. She did not touch anything. She cleaned and left. Invisible. Forgettable. Safe. The break room on floor 42 had the best coffee machine in the building. Executives from other floors found excuses to use it. Which is why Nadine always cleaned it at 10:15 a.m., when most executives were in their first meetings of the day. Until the Tuesday when her schedule got shifted. She was wiping down counters at 11:30 instead, cursing the fire alarm test that had thrown off her routine, when the door opened. She didn't look up. Rule 1 of invisibility: acknowledge presence with body language, a slight shift, a small step aside, but never with eye contact. She moved her cart 3 inches to the left, clearing a path to the coffee machine. You're new. Not a question. A statement. Nadine kept wiping, responding without pausing. Started 2 months ago, sir. 2 months and I'm just noticing you. That seems like my loss. Something in his tone made her glance up despite herself. David Morrison. Logistics manager. Floor 42. She recognized him from her mental map of the organization. Mid-40s. White. Medium height with a runner's build. The kind of conventionally handsome that came from expensive haircuts and regular gym memberships. He was blocking the path to the door. Just doing my job, sir, she said, keeping her voice neutral, eyes already back on the counter she was wiping. Your job includes the entire floor, he asked, moving closer to the coffee machine. Not using it. Just moving. Floors 40 through 52, sir. That's a lot of territory to cover. He leaned against the counter she'd just cleaned. You must be very thorough. The way he said thorough made her skin tighten. I should finish up, Nadine said, gathering her supplies. Other areas to clean. What's your name? He asked, still not moving from his position between her and the door. Nadine Usher. She never lied when asked directly. Lying created inconsistency. Inconsistency created attention. Nadine. He repeated it like he was tasting it. I'm David Morrison. Logistics management. She nodded without looking at him, wheeling her cart toward the door. He stepped aside at the last possible moment, his arm brushing against hers as she passed. Not an accident. The break room was 15 feet wide. See you around, Nadine. She didn't respond. The door swung shut behind her. In the empty hallway, she took one deep breath. Just one. Then she was moving again, invisible again, safe again. Except she wasn't. That night, in her apartment, Nadine opened her laptop. The internet connection was slow, the cheapest plan Spectrum offered, but it worked. David Morrison. LinkedIn profile. Logistics manager at Hanjin Logistics Group, 8 years. Before that, Daewoo Shipping, 3 years. Dartmouth undergrad. No graduate degree. She clicked through to his connections. Thomas Morrison. Board of Directors at Hanjin Logistics Group. Same last name. Profile picture showed the family resemblance. Uncle, most likely. Nadine closed the laptop. The math was simple. David Morrison had connections. Connections meant protection. Protection meant power. Power meant danger. She filed this information away with everything else she'd learned about Hanjin. Just another data point in an increasingly complex equation. An equation where she was the smallest variable. By month 3, Nadine had collected 2,160 data points about Hanjin Tower. That's what her mind called them, anyway. Data points. Observations. Patterns. She knew that Anderson from accounting took 3 smoke breaks every day, exactly 37 minutes apart. She knew that the security rotation changed every Tuesday at 4 p.m. instead of the usual 2 p.m. She knew that deliveries to the loading dock happened at 1 a.m. on Wednesdays and Fridays, and the security cameras in that area switched off for exactly 43 minutes during those deliveries. She knew that certain conference rooms were booked under the name strategic planning, but were never actually used. The lights stayed off, the doors remained locked. She knew that the janitorial closet on the 48th floor was accessed by men who didn't carry cleaning supplies. Economists dealt in patterns. And Nadine saw patterns everywhere. "The Shanghai route is bleeding money," said a voice from inside conference room C. Nadine paused outside, her cart positioned to block the partially open door from closing completely. Eavesdropping wasn't her intention, but information was survival. "We've adjusted the manifests 3 times, another voice replied. Stressed. Male. American accent. "We're still showing a 14% loss compared to last quarter. Mr. Lee wants solutions, not problems." A third voice. Korean accent. Authority. Nadine wiped the same spot on the window beside the door, making herself busy, making herself part of the architecture. "The issue is container utilization," the first voice said. "We're shipping at 82% capacity on the return routes." Nadine's mind instantly did the math. Shipping containers. Capacity utilization. Profit margins. The problem wasn't the route. It was the balance. They were shipping full containers to Shanghai and returning with partial loads because the import-export ratio between the destinations was uneven. The solution was obvious: secondary pickups at Busan or Yokohama on the return route. Increase utilization to at least 90%. She almost spoke. Almost knocked. Almost said, "Excuse me, but..." Instead, she moved her cart 6 inches to the right and continued cleaning the window that was already clean. The hardest part wasn't the physical work. It wasn't the early mornings or the chemical smell of industrial cleaner that clung to her clothes. The hardest part was pretending she didn't understand everything happening around her. Pretending the master's degree on her wall at home didn't exist. Pretending the brain that had graduated top of her class was only good for remembering which bathroom needed more paper towels. That night, Nadine sat at her kitchen table with a notebook. Not a diary. She wasn't the diary type. This was a data collection tool. On the left side, observations. In the middle, patterns. On the right, conclusions. She wrote in a personal shorthand, never using company names, never recording anything that would violate her confidentiality agreement. Just patterns. Behaviors. Systems. Service elevator maintenance schedule doesn't match usage patterns. Floor 47, power consumption inconsistent with occupancy. Executive visitor badges issued without logging. She wasn't gathering evidence. She was organizing her thoughts. Finding the shape of things by mapping their edges. What she didn't know was that this notebook, this simple habit of analysis, would later save her life. The 5th time David Morrison appeared in her path, Nadine started counting. The 5th time was a Tuesday, 9:47 a.m., hallway outside the men's restroom on floor 44. She was replacing paper towels. "Morning, Nadine," he said, like they were colleagues. Like they'd had multiple conversations instead of 4 brief, one-sided exchanges. "Good morning, sir." "David," he corrected. Sir makes me feel old. She didn't respond, didn't correct herself, kept restocking paper towels. He leaned against the doorway. You know, you should smile more. You've got a beautiful face. She nodded once, still not looking at him, and moved to exit the restroom. He didn't step aside immediately. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3. Then he moved, but not enough. She had to turn sideways to slip past without touching him. 5. Done. She wheeled her cart away, feeling his eyes on her back. The 6th time was a Thursday, 10:15 a.m., break room on 42. She'd returned to her regular schedule, but so had he. That uniform really doesn't do you justice, he said as she wiped down tables. She nodded once. Non-committal. Not encouraging. Not rude enough to report. Do you have a boyfriend? Husband? She kept wiping, kept moving. I need to finish here, sir. David, he corrected again. And you didn't answer my question. She looked at him directly for the first time. Brief. Professional. I keep my personal life separate from work, sir. His smile tightened at the corners. Admirable. Old-fashioned. I like that. She finished cleaning and left. 6. Done. The 7th time was a Monday, 8:22 a.m., elevator bank on 46. She was waiting for the service elevator. He stepped up beside her. We keep running into each other, he said. The service elevator arrived. She stepped in, hoping he'd continue to his destination. He followed her in. She pressed SL for service level. He didn't press any button. Which floor, sir? She asked, staring at the control panel. Just enjoying the ride, he said. The elevator was 6 feet wide. He stood less than 2 feet from her. She clutched the handle of her cart, acutely aware of the closed space, the lack of cameras. You're very focused, he said. I've noticed that about you. Always working. Always thinking. The elevator seemed to move slower than usual. You're not really the cleaning type, are you? He asked, his voice lower. You seem educated. The elevator reached the service level. The doors opened. This is my floor, she said, pushing her cart forward. His hand touched her lower back as she passed. Just for a moment. Just enough. Have a good day, Nadine. The doors closed. She exhaled. 7. Done. That night, Nadine opened a new page in her notebook. At the top, she wrote. David Morrison, incidents. She recorded each interaction. Date. Time. Location. What was said. Whether anyone else was present. Whether physical contact occurred. She didn't know if it would ever matter. But economists deal in data. And data is power. By month 3, Nadine had perfected the art of invisibility. She knew which hallways to avoid. Which elevators were safest. Which times David Morrison was most likely to accidentally appear. She had a system. A routine. A strategy. What she didn't know was that her strategy was about to fail. Because David Morrison had just decided that invisible wasn't good enough anymore. And somewhere on the 52nd floor, someone else had been watching her survival tactics with growing interest. Someone who recognized strategy when he saw it. Nadine began to count the incidents on her fingers. Then in her notebook. Then in bruises. It was easier, somehow, to think of them as data points. Evidence. Not things happening to her body, her space, her sense of safety, just information to be collected, organized, and analyzed. By month 4, she had developed a system. On a Tuesday at 7:13 a.m. The elevator doors were closing on the lobby level when a hand shot between them. The sensors triggered, doors reopening. David Morrison stepped inside, straightening his tie. "Going up?" he asked, smiling like it was a coincidence. It wasn't. The executive elevators and service elevators were on opposite sides of the lobby. There was no reason for him to be using this one at this hour. Nadine's finger was still on the door close button. Her thumb pressed harder, uselessly. The doors were already shutting. 42 floors. No cameras. She knew because she'd checked. He stood closer than necessary in the empty elevator. Not touching her, but close enough that she could smell his cologne. Something expensive that tried too hard. "We keep running into each other," he said. The elevator climbed. Floor 12. 13. The numbers blinked too slowly. "Did Patricia talk to you?" Nadine asked, eyes fixed on the floor indicator. His smile didn't change. "About what?" She didn't answer. The message was clear, HR had done nothing. "You know," he said, shifting slightly closer, "you're different from the other cleaning staff. More alert. Educated, almost." Floor 27. 28. Most people in your position, they're just grateful for the paycheck. They don't ask questions. They don't notice things. Floor 33. 34. "But you notice everything, don't you, Nadine?" She didn't respond. Her right hand gripped the cleaning cart handle. Her left hand was in her pocket, wrapped around her pepper spray. Floor 40. 41. 42. The doors opened. She pushed her cart forward immediately. "Have a good day," he said as she exited. She didn't turn around. 8. Done. There's a special kind of fear that comes from being trapped in a metal box with someone who thinks, "No," is a suggestion. It's not the immediate panic of danger. It's the slow-motion horror of knowing that for 42 floors, for 94 seconds, no one would hear you scream. Incident number 11 was different. It happened on a Thursday, 1:47 p.m., service corridor on 45. The narrow hallway that connected the maintenance closet to the bathrooms. No security cameras. No foot traffic. Nadine had just finished restocking supplies. Her cart was full, her shift almost over. 30 more minutes and she could go home. She turned the corner and there he was. Just standing there, like he'd been waiting. "Nadine," he said. "Just the person I was looking for." The corridor was 8 feet wide. Her cart took up 3. He was standing in the middle, leaving barely enough space to pass. "Excuse me," she said, trying to will past. "I need to finish my rounds." His hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. Not gentle. Not an accident. "You're always rushing off," he said. The fake smile was gone. "We never get to finish our conversations." She tried to pull her arm away. His grip tightened. "Let go," she said. Not loud. Not yet. But firm. "I just want to talk," he said. His thumb pressed into the soft underside of her wrist, where the pulse points were. "About your chat with HR. About how disappointed I am that you misunderstood my friendly gestures." She yanked her arm back with enough force to break his grip. He wasn't expecting resistance. "I need to finish my shift," she said, pushing her cart forward, forcing him to step aside or be hit. He moved, but barely. She had to turn her body to squeeze past. His hand reached out again, brushed her hip. "This conversation isn't over, Nadine." She kept walking. Did not run. Did not look back. 11. Done. By evening, the bruise on her wrist had formed, 5 distinct fingerprints, dark against her brown skin. She photographed it in the harsh bathroom light of her apartment, the time stamp clear on her phone, 7:42 p.m., Thursday. Evidence. Data. Another entry in the growing log. Mrs. Park's office was exactly what you'd expect from 20 years in corporate HR, degrees on walls. Family photo, husband, 2 teenagers, positioned for visitors to see. Desk organized with the precision of someone who handled other people's chaos for a living. Nadine sat in the visitor's chair, back straight, hands folded in her lap. She wore a long-sleeved shirt despite the warm May weather. The bruise had faded to a sickly yellow-green, but it was still visible. Better to hide it than explain it. "Thank you for meeting with me," Nadine said. Mrs. Park nodded, professional concern on her face. "Of course. What can I help you with?" "I need to file a formal complaint against David Morrison." Mrs. Park's expression didn't change, but her pen paused above her notepad. Just for a second. Then she was writing again. "What's the nature of your complaint?" "Harassment. Unwanted physical contact. Intimidation." More writing. Mrs. Park's face remained neutral, practiced. "Can you be specific about these incidents?" Nadine was prepared. She recited dates, times, locations. The elevator encounters. The comments about her appearance. The wrist grab in the service corridor. Did anyone witness these interactions? Mrs. Park asked. No, Nadine admitted. He's careful about that. More writing. The sound of the pen against paper filled the silence. And you're sure you haven't misinterpreted his intentions? Sometimes friendly gestures can be. He grabbed my wrist hard enough to leave bruises, Nadine interrupted. That's not a friendly gesture. Mrs. Park looked up. Do you have documentation of these bruises? Yes. Nadine took out her phone, pulled up the photo. Showed it to Mrs. Park. Mrs. Park studied it. This could have happened any number of ways. It happened exactly the way I described. Unfortunately, without witnesses. You're saying you don't believe me? I'm saying, Mrs. Park replied carefully, closing her notebook, that David Morrison has been with Hanjin for 8 years. He has an exemplary record. His uncle sits on our board of directors. There it was. The real reason nothing would happen. So because he's connected, he can do whatever he wants? Nadine asked. I didn't say that. Mrs. Park's voice remained even. I'll speak to David about appropriate workplace conduct. But I'd recommend being careful about finding yourself alone with him. Being careful. Like it was her job to avoid harassment, not his job to stop harassing. Nadine stood up. Thank you for your time. I'll make a note of your concerns in his file, Mrs. Park said, as if that meant anything. In the hallway outside HR, Nadine's hands were shaking. Not with fear. With rage. The system wasn't broken. It was working exactly as designed. Just not for people like her. HR departments exist to protect companies, not employees. This isn't cynicism, it's documented reality. Studies show that over 75% of employees who report harassment face some form of retaliation, while fewer than 15% of harassers face meaningful consequences. For someone like Nadine, a black woman in a low-status position, reporting a white man with connections, those odds dropped even further. But knowing the statistics didn't make the reality any less infuriating. David knew about the complaint within 48 hours. Nadine could tell by the way he looked at her in the hallway on Tuesday morning. The fake friendliness was gone. So was the predatory smile. His eyes were cold, calculating, measuring her in a new way. He didn't speak to her that day. Or the next. The comments stopped. The accidental encounters stopped. Instead, she would turn a corner and find him watching her from across a room. She would exit a bathroom and see him down the hallway, phone to his ear, eyes following her movement. Sometimes silence is louder than words. And David Morrison's silence screamed of something dangerous building behind it. The first time Nadine saw Lee Min-woo, she almost didn't recognize him. It was 6:45 a.m. on a Wednesday, her 8th time cleaning his office. The space was supposed to be empty, as it always was at this hour. Except this time, something was different. The desk lamp was on. A coffee mug, white porcelain, still steaming, sat beside the keyboard. Someone had been here. Recently. Nadine hesitated in the doorway. Sun-hee's warning echoed in her mind. If he's there, you turn around. You come back later. You never disturb. But the office appeared empty. Bathroom door open. No coat on the rack. No briefcase beside the desk. She should leave. Come back later. That was protocol. Instead, she stepped inside and began her routine. Quickly. Efficiently. Vacuum the floor, dust the surfaces, empty the small trash can, wipe down the glass tabletop. As she worked, her eyes kept returning to the photograph on his desk. The one in the silver frame. The traditional Korean family portrait. Grandparents in handbox. 2 young boys standing in front. Today, for the first time, she broke her own rule. She looked more closely. The older couple stood rigid, formal. The woman's face betrayed nothing. The man's expression was stern, commanding. The older boy, maybe 12, had the same stern expression as the man. Shoulders back. Chin up. A miniature adult. But the younger boy, perhaps 7 or 8, was smiling. Not a full grin, that wouldn't be allowed in a formal portrait, but the corners of his mouth turned up slightly. His eyes held something like mischief. She wondered which one became the man everyone feared. That's my grandfather. The voice came from the doorway. Nadine spun around, her heart stopping for a full second before slamming against her ribs. Lee Min-woo stood in the entrance to his office, watching her. He was taller than she'd expected. At least 6'3". Broad-shouldered in a charcoal suit without a tie, the top button of his white shirt undone. His black hair was styled simply, expensive in its restraint. But what struck her most were his hands. Strong hands. Tattooed at the wrists, intricate patterns disappearing beneath his shirt cuffs. And his eyes. Dark, steady, completely unreadable. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't realize you were. She stopped. Mrs. Park's rules echoed. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't ask questions. You didn't answer my question. His voice was calm, neutral, neither threatening nor friendly. Nadine's mind raced. He hadn't asked a question. He'd made a statement about his grandfather. You asked about the photograph, she said carefully. But you didn't ask a question. Sir. Something shifted in his expression. Not a smile, but close. A flicker of interest. You're observant. I try to be, sir. How long have you worked here? 4 months and 12 days. Which floors? 40 through 52. Executive level. He moved into the office, and Nadine stepped back automatically, giving him space. He walked to the window, hands in his pockets, looking out over the city. Do you like the work? The question surprised her. People like Lee Min-woo didn't ask cleaning staff if they liked their work. They barely acknowledged cleaning staff existed. It pays well, she said honestly. The benefits are good. That's not what I asked. Nadine hesitated. The truth was that she didn't like the work. She liked being able to eat. She liked being able to pay rent. She liked not drowning, for the first time in 2 years. I like being able to survive, she said finally. The work is the price. Lee Min-woo turned to look at her. Really look, the way most people never did. Like he was seeing past the uniform, past the cleaning cart, past the invisible barrier between someone who owned a building and someone who cleaned it. What did you do before this? I have a master's degree in economics. From Howard University. The words came out before she could stop them. Nobody's hiring economists without experience. So you clean offices instead. I do what's necessary. Sir. Another almost smile. You don't have to keep calling me sir. Mrs. Parks rules. I'd prefer to keep my job. Ah. He nodded slowly. Mrs. Park is thorough. He didn't say anything else. After a moment, Nadine realized she'd been standing there frozen, completely forgetting about her actual job. I should finish cleaning, she said. If you need me to come back later. No. Finish your work. I'll be in a meeting for the next hour. He walked past her toward the door, then stopped. What's your name? Nadine. Nadine Usher. Nadine. He repeated it like he was filing it away. I'll remember that. Then he was gone. Nadine stood in the empty office, heart pounding, trying to understand what had just happened. The most dangerous man in Manhattan had asked her name. Had looked at her like she mattered. And she had absolutely no idea what that meant. There's a concept in psychology called breaking pattern. When something unexpected happens, it forces us to pay attention. To actually see what's in front of us. For 4 months, Nadine had been invisible. She'd worked hard at being invisible. It was her survival strategy. Lee Min-woo had just shattered that invisibility in 5 minutes. And that scared her more than David Morrison ever had. Because David was a known threat. Predictable. Manageable. Min-woo was something else entirely. The rumor spread through Hanjin Tower like electricity through water. Nadine didn't know how. She hadn't told anyone. Not even Sun-hee. But somehow, by the next day, David Morrison knew that she'd spoken to Lee Min-woo. That the CEO knew her name. That he'd asked about her background. Heard you had a chat with the big boss, David said. It was 1:15 p.m., hallway outside the copy room on 43. He'd been waiting for her. Moving up in the world? She kept her face neutral, her body language disinterested. Just doing my job. Just doing your job, he repeated, stepping closer. The hallway was empty. Like you were just doing your job when you went to HR? She didn't answer. Her hand was already in her pocket, wrapped around her pepper spray. Funny thing about this company, David said, his voice dropping. People who get too close to the top tend to fall. Hard. The threat wasn't subtle. Excuse me, she said, trying to move past him with her cart. He stepped aside, but his hand caught her arm as she passed. Not as hard as before. Just a warning squeeze. Be careful who you talk to, Nadine. She pulled away and kept walking. That night, she stared at her bank account on her cracked phone screen. $73.41. Not enough to quit. Not nearly enough. She'd been careful. Putting aside small amounts from each paycheck. Eating ramen 4 nights a week. No streaming services. No new clothes. No life outside work and sleep. But $73.41 wouldn't cover rent. Wouldn't cover food. Wouldn't cover the minimum payment on her student loans that was already 2 months late. Nadine closed the banking app and opened her documentation notebook instead. Added the new incident. Date. Time. Location. Exact words. The warning squeeze that wasn't quite a grab. When she was done, she flipped through the pages. 15 incidents now. 15 data points building a pattern that nobody with power seemed to care about. Except maybe one person. The most dangerous one of all. The next 2 weeks would be the longest of Nadine's life. Not because of what happened. but because of what was about to happen. Because David Morrison had spent 8 years learning how to hurt people without leaving evidence. And he'd just decided that Nadine Usher had become a problem that needed solving. Permanently. Wednesday night. 9:17 p.m. Nadine hadn't planned to work late. The quarterly reports were due Thursday morning, and the executives had been in meetings all day, leaving trails of coffee cups and discarded paper that needed clearing before the morning shift. The Hangen Tower emptied in layers. Regular employees at 5. Middle management by 6. Senior staff by 7. By 9 p.m., only the workaholics, cleaning crew, and security remained. She checked her phone. Last subway that would get her home at a decent hour left in 20 minutes. Enough time if she hurried. The service elevator opened on the parking level. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flickering at the far end where the bulbs needed replacing. Her footsteps echoed against concrete. One security guard should have been stationed by the entrance. His booth was empty. Nadine's hand tightened around her pepper spray as she walked toward her section. Row G, spot 23. Her 10-year-old Honda with the dent in the passenger door and the tape holding the left mirror together. Her instincts screamed before her conscious mind registered why. The garage was too quiet. No distant car engines. No elevator hum. No radio from the security booth. Just footsteps behind her that weren't there a moment ago. Working late? David Morrison stepped out from behind a concrete pillar. Not smiling. Not pretending this was accidental. Nadine's heart hammered against her ribs. She kept walking, eyes focused on her car 30 yards away. "I'm heading home," she said. Voice steady. Hand gripping the pepper spray in her pocket. "Patricia told me what you said," David continued, matching her pace. "That I assaulted you. That I left bruises." She didn't answer. 25 yards to the car. "That's a serious accusation, Nadine." "Because it's true." "No," he said, moving faster, cutting off her path. "What's true is that you've been leading me on for months. Smiling at me in meetings. And now you're trying to ruin my career because I finally made a move. I never smiled at you. I never led you on." 15 yards to the car. Keys already in hand. "You're delusional." His expression twisted with rage. "I'm delusional?" He lunged at her. Nadine had taken 2 self-defense classes at the community center in Washington Heights. Enough to know the basics. She tried to use the pepper spray, but he was faster, knocking it from her hand, sending it skittering across the concrete floor. Her knee came up toward his groin. He twisted, taking the blow on his thigh instead. His hand tangled in her hair, slamming her against the concrete pillar. The impact drove the air from her lungs. "You think you're so smart," he snarled, his fist connecting with her ribs. "So much better than everyone." Another punch. Something cracked inside her. The pain was immediate, blinding. "But you're nothing," he hissed. "Just another." She clawed at his face, felt her nails connect, draw blood. He cursed, slammed her head back against the concrete. The world spun. She tried to scream, but his hand clamped over her mouth. "You tell anyone about this," he said, his voice suddenly quiet, controlled, "and I'll finish the job." Then he was gone, footsteps echoing in the empty garage. Nadine slid down the pillar to the floor, arms wrapped around her torso, trying to breathe through pain that felt like fire inside her chest. The garage lights flickered overhead. 1 blink. 2. Then darkness swallowed everything. She didn't pass out. Not completely. Just moments of gray static interrupting consciousness. Static, then the concrete cold against her cheek. Static, then dragging herself toward her car. Static, then fumbling with keys, hands shaking. 9:48 p.m. She was behind the wheel, moving through pain that made the world blur at the edges. She couldn't go to Manhattan Memorial. That was where Hanjin executives went. Someone would recognize her. She couldn't afford an ambulance. Couldn't afford emergency room charges. Meadowview Urgent Care in Queens. That was the answer. 40 minutes away. Open until midnight. No connection to Hanjin. Each breath was a knife between her ribs. Each pothole in the road sent fresh pain exploding through her body. She drove with one hand pressed against her side, as if holding herself together. 10:32 p.m. The urgent care waiting room was half empty. A mother with a feverish toddler. An elderly man with a persistent cough. A teenage boy with what looked like a broken finger. Name? The receptionist asked. Nadine Usher. Insurance? Hanjin Corporation. She handed over her card. Reason for visit? I fell. The lie tasted bitter. Down some stairs. 43 minutes later, she was in an exam room with Dr. Patel, a woman in her 50s with gentle hands and eyes that had seen too many falls to believe them. 2 broken ribs, she said, studying the X-rays. Severe bruising across your torso. Possible mild concussion from the impact to your head. This wasn't from stairs. Nadine said nothing. These injuries are consistent with an assault, Dr. Patel continued. I can have a social worker come speak with you. We can file a police report. I can't. Why not? Because it won't matter. He's connected. I'm nobody. Nadine's voice cracked. The system doesn't work for people like me. Dr. Patel's expression held such profound sadness. Then at least let me document this properly, she said. In case you change your mind. Nadine nodded, too exhausted to argue. The examination was thorough. Every bruise photographed. Every injury documented. Forms signed. Reports filed. These are your discharge instructions, Dr. Patel said, handing her papers and a prescription. Strong painkillers for the next week. Rest. No lifting. No strenuous activity. You should take at least 2 weeks off work. 2 weeks. Without pay. Impossible. I'll be careful, Nadine said. Dr. Patel knew it was a lie. They both did. The ribs will take 6 to 8 weeks to fully heal, she said. If you develop difficulty breathing, severe pain, or dizziness, go to an emergency room immediately. Nadine took the papers. Took the prescription. Paid her copay from her dwindling bank account. $73.41 minus $30. $43.41 remaining. 12:46 a.m. She drove to a 24-hour pharmacy. Filled the prescription. Another $15 copay. $28.41 remaining. 1:37 a.m. Home. The stairs to her third-floor apartment nearly broke her. Each step sent fresh waves of agony through her body. Inside, she locked the door. Double-checked it. Triple-checked. She took 2 painkillers. Then, sitting at her kitchen table, she made a decision that would define the next 3 days. She would go back to work. She would finish the quarterly report due Friday. She would not let David Morrison win, even if it killed her. 5:30 a.m. Thursday. Day 1. Nadine stared at herself in the bathroom mirror. The bruises had darkened overnight. Purple and black spread across her torso like spilled ink. Her face had been spared, except for a small cut at her temple that could be covered with makeup. Getting dressed was an exercise in agony. First, bandages wrapped tightly around her ribs, providing compression that made breathing fractionally less painful. Next, the loosest bra she owned, still too tight against the bruising. Then, a tank top. A long-sleeved shirt buttoned to the collar. An oversized blazer she'd bought at Goodwill for interviews before giving up on professional jobs. She looked normal. Professional, even. As long as nobody saw what was underneath. The painkillers dulled the edges but couldn't touch the core of her agony. Each breath was still fire. Each movement still sent lightning through her nervous system. But she could function. Could walk. Could speak. She crushed another painkiller between her teeth before leaving the apartment. Survival wasn't pretty. But she was very, very good at it. 6 a.m. Hanjin Tower lobby. Security nodded to her as she badged in. They didn't notice her slightly stiff gait. Didn't see how she kept her left arm pressed against her side, stabilizing her ribs. The service elevator was empty, thank God. She leaned against the wall once the doors closed, allowing herself 10 seconds of relief when no one could see her face contort with pain. She started on the 40th floor, working slower than usual. Every movement calculated to minimize stress on her broken ribs. By 8:30, she'd managed 3 floors instead of her usual 5. Had to skip 2 restrooms. Had taken 4 more painkillers, double the recommended dose. At 9:17, David Morrison stepped out of the elevator on 43. Nadine was vacuuming the hallway. She didn't look up, but her body went rigid, sending fresh waves of pain through her torso. He walked past her like she didn't exist. No acknowledgement. No comment. But as he passed, he said one word. Quiet enough that only she could hear. Remember. That single word carried the weight of his threat from the garage. Tell anyone, and I'll finish the job. She kept vacuuming, kept breathing through the pain, kept surviving. By noon, she could barely stand. The painkillers were wearing off faster. The compression bandage felt like it was suffocating her. She locked herself in a bathroom stall on 48, pressed her forehead against the cool metal partition, and allowed herself exactly 60 seconds of silent tears. Then she straightened. Reapplied her makeup. Took 2 more painkillers. And went back to work. That night, in her apartment, Nadine carefully documented everything. New page in her notebook, assault, parking garage. Date. Time. Exact location. What was said. The injuries. She added the doctor's report. The photographs from urgent care. The prescription information. Then she wrote out the calculation that had forced her back to work. Rent due, $1,450. Current bank balance, $28.41. Payday, 9 days away. Time off without pay, not an option. The math was simple. Brutal but simple. And that's when the email arrived from Patricia in HR. All cleaning staff required for quarterly meeting preparation. Friday 2 p.m., Executive Conference Room, 52nd floor. Attendance mandatory. Friday. 2 p.m. Less than 24 hours away. She could do this. One more day. She just had to survive one more day. 4:30 a.m. The alarm's chirp sounded like a scream to Nadine's exhausted mind. Her eyes opened to darkness, to pain, to the weight of another day pressing down on her broken body. Getting out of bed took planning now. Step 1, roll to her right side, keeping torso rigid. Step 2, use her right arm to push up while swinging legs to the floor. Step 3, pause for the wave of nausea to pass. The pain had evolved overnight. Less sharp, more pervasive. A dull throbbing that spiked whenever she inhaled too deeply. Bathroom. Medicine cabinet. 6 ibuprofen remained in the bottle. She took 3, crushing them between her teeth, swallowing the bitter powder dry. Shower was impossible, she couldn't raise her arms high enough to wash her hair. She settled for a careful wipe down with a damp cloth, avoiding the darkest bruises. The mirror showed the progression. Purple had deepened to black across her rib cage. Yellow edges were forming around the older bruises. The cut at her temple had scabbed over but looked angry, red against her brown skin. More makeup today. Foundation. Concealer. Careful blending. You can do this, she told her reflection. 4 hours. Stand for 4 hours. Then you can go home. The largest blazer she owned. Black, boxy, concealing. Loose slacks with an elastic waist that didn't press against her torso. She checked her phone. 94% charged. Keys with pepper spray, useless as it had proven. Wallet with $23 cash and a debit card that guarded her last $28.41. Enough for today. Not enough for a life. The Saturday morning subway crawled between stations. Weekend schedule. Fewer trains. More waiting. Nadine stood, gripping the pole. Sitting hurt more, the rigid plastic seats forced her spine straight, pressed against her damaged ribs. Standing let her lean, let her shift her weight when the pain flared. Outside the windows, the city was waking reluctantly. Bodega owners rolling up metal shutters. Early joggers in Central Park. Weekend workers trudging toward jobs that didn't respect Saturdays. A young woman across from her was reading something on her phone, smiling. A couple leaned against each other, dozing. A child pointed at Nadine's formal clothes, curious about who dressed up on weekends. Normal people. Normal lives. Nadine envied their ignorance of how quickly normal could shatter. 4 hours. Stand for 4 hours. Then she could go home. Hanjin Tower felt different on Saturdays. The emptiness made it honest somehow. No pretense of being just another corporation when the hallways echoed and security watched more carefully. The lobby guard checked her ID twice, scrutinizing her face against the photo. Quarterly meeting, he asked. Yes, she answered. Cleaning staff. He nodded, eyes already moving to the next person. As she crossed the lobby, a black BMW pulled into the executive parking space visible through the glass doors. David Morrison stepped out, straightening his tie. Their eyes met through the glass. He didn't smile. Didn't nod. Just stared, his expression somewhere between satisfaction and warning. She looked away first, moving toward the elevator bank. Her hand was steady as she pressed the button. Her breathing was controlled despite the fire in her chest. She would not give him the satisfaction of seeing her break. By 1:45 p.m., Nadine had positioned herself strategically in the executive conference room on the 52nd floor. Back wall. Near the door. A smooth marble column she could lean against without looking like she needed support. The other cleaning staff milled around, straightening chairs, refilling water pitchers. Normal pre-meeting tasks. None of them noticed how Nadine minimized her movements, how she used her right hand for everything, how she breathed in small, careful sips of air. She took 4 more ibuprofen, washing them down with water stolen from an executive's glass. Double the recommended dose. Still not enough. The digital clock on the wall read 1:55 p.m. 5 minutes until the meeting. 5 minutes until she could become invisible again. 5 minutes until the hardest performance of her life began. The conference room filled in order of importance. First, the assistants, laptops open, seating cards arranged. Then department heads, moving with the confidence of the middle tier. Next, senior executives, who didn't rush, didn't worry, didn't apologize for anything. Finally, the board members, men who'd been making decisions since before Nadine was born. David Morrison sat 3/4 down the massive oval table, in the logistics section. He didn't look at her. Didn't need to. His victory was already complete in his mind. At exactly 2 p.m., the room shifted. Subtle but unmistakable. Conversations quieted. Postures straightened. Faces composed into attentive masks. Lee Min-woo entered. He didn't hurry. Didn't announce himself. Simply appeared in the doorway, and the room reorganized itself around him like iron filings aligning to a magnet. Nadine had seen him only once before, in his office, but that hadn't prepared her for Min-woo in his full authority. He wore a black suit that fit him perfectly. No tie. White shirt open at the collar, revealing hints of the tattoos that marked him as something other than just another CEO. He moved to the head of the table, standing rather than sitting. His eyes scanned the room methodically, assessing, categorizing, measuring. When his gaze passed over Nadine, it didn't pause. Didn't recognize. She was invisible again, exactly as she wanted. Quarterly review, he said, his voice quieter than expected. People leaned forward to hear, which was exactly the point. He made them work to listen. Department heads, you have 5 minutes each. Numbers only. I don't want explanations unless I ask for them. The meeting began. Finance first. Charts projected on the wall. Growth in some sectors, concerns in others. Nadine focused on breathing. Small, shallow breaths that kept the pain at a consistent throb rather than sharp spikes. 2:15 p.m. Her left leg began to tremble. She shifted her weight, pressing harder against the column behind her. Operations next. Supply chain issues in the Asian corridors. Shipping delays that cost money. 2:30 p.m. The room's edges began to blur. The voices became muffled, as if she were hearing them through water. She blinked hard, tried to focus. Legal department. Something about regulatory compliance. Words that stopped making sense. 2:38 p.m. She shifted her weight again, and pain lanced through her side. Sharp enough that she had to bite her lip to keep from gasping. Human resources. Patricia's voice, discussing retention rates, completely avoiding mention of harassment complaints. 2:42 p.m. Excuse me, said a voice. Male. One of the executives. Looking at her. What's the status of the new cleaning supply budget? We're still seeing overages. Nadine blinked. Found her professional voice somewhere. The new inventory system is in place. We should see reductions by next quarter. He nodded, satisfied. Turned away. She had no idea if what she'd said made sense. The words had assembled themselves without her conscious input. 2:45 p.m. The tunnel was closing in. Darkness at the edges of her vision. Sounds becoming distant. She needed air. Real air, not these tiny sips that barely kept her conscious. She tried to take a deeper breath. Her ribs protested with a stab of agony so intense that her vision whited out for a second. She gasped audibly. Heads turned. She needed to get out. Needed to reach the door before she fell. Needed to maintain dignity, professionalism, invisibility. She took one step toward the exit. Her legs gave out. The world slowed to frame-by-frame clarity. Nadine felt her knees buckle first. The muscles simply stopped responding, went liquid beneath her. Her right hand reached for the wall, missed, grasped empty air. Then her vision tunneled, fluorescent lights blurring into white streaks above her. The floor rushed up to meet her. Italian marble. Expensive. Unforgiving. Time stretched. In that endless moment of falling, her brain offered an absurd calculus. If she landed wrong, she might puncture a lung with her broken rib. Medical bills would destroy her. She'd lose her job for making a scene. She'd be back at zero, but with hospital debt. Not here. Not in front of everyone. She closed her eyes, braced for impact. It never came. Instead, strong hands caught her mid-fall. One behind her shoulders, one under her knees. The transition from falling to being held happened so smoothly it felt choreographed. She was lifted upward, cradled against a solid chest. Her eyes fluttered open, vision swimming back into focus. Lee Min-woo's face was inches from hers. Dark eyes assessing. Jaw tense. His expression revealed nothing, but his arms held her with surprising gentleness for hands that could break a man. "Sir, she tried, but her voice wouldn't cooperate. "Don't speak," he said quietly. Not harsh. Just absolute. The room had frozen. 43 people staring in shock. Executives, department heads, board members, cleaning staff, all rendered silent by the sight of Lee Min-woo, feared CEO, holding a cleaning woman in his arms like something precious. He didn't look at any of them. His attention was entirely focused on Nadine, scanning her face, noting the makeup-concealed cut at her temple, the pallor beneath her brown skin, the pain she couldn't hide. "Get Dr. Kim," he said, his voice cutting through the silence. "My private suite. Now." One of his assistants scrambled for a phone. "Sir," someone started, "should we call an ambulance?" "Now." The word wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. No one questioned him twice. Min-woo turned and walked out of the conference room, carrying Nadine as if she weighed nothing. As they passed the logistics section, his eyes briefly met David Morrison's. Nothing was said. Nothing needed to be. But in that fraction of a second, something was noted. Catalogued. Filed away for later. The journey to the private elevator was a blur for Nadine. Pain and embarrassment and confusion swirled together. She was failing at the most basic task, staying invisible. The elevator doors closed. Min-woo shifted her weight slightly, minimizing pressure on her ribs with an awareness that surprised her. As if he knew exactly where she was hurt. "Stay awake," he said. His voice was different now. Quieter. Almost gentle. "You're safe now." She tried to respond but couldn't find the words. The adrenaline was fading, and with it, her tenuous grip on consciousness. "I've got you," he said. The words followed her into darkness. Nadine surfaced slowly from unconsciousness, awareness returning in layers. First, she was lying on something impossibly soft. Second, the pain was still there, but dulled. Third, voices were speaking nearby, measured and calm. She opened her eyes to an unfamiliar ceiling. High, white, minimalist. Nothing like her apartment's water-stained tiles. "She's awake," said a voice. Not Min-woo's. Turning her head required enormous effort. The movement revealed a bedroom larger than her entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased a Manhattan view that belonged in magazines. Minimalist furniture in grays and blacks. A king bed where she now lay. Min-woo stood at the foot of the bed, hands in his pockets, face unreadable. Beside him was an older Korean man with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses, holding a medical bag. "Ms. Usher," the older man said, approaching the bed. "I'm Dr. Kim. How is your pain level, on a scale of 1 to 10? 7, she whispered, her voice rough. "You've been unconscious for about 15 minutes, Dr. Kim explained. I need to examine you properly now. Can you tell me what happened?" "I fell," she said automatically. Min-woo made a small sound. Not quite a scoff, but close. "Let's start with honesty," he said. Dr. Kim looked between them, understanding some unspoken dynamic. "I need to see your torso," he said to Nadine. "To properly assess your injuries." She hesitated, eyes flicking to Min-woo. "Show him," Min-woo said, not unkindly. "Or I find out another way." The implication was clear. One way or another, he would know the truth. Nadine nodded slowly. With careful movements, she removed the blazer. Then, with Dr. Kim's help, raised her shirt to just beneath her bra. The room went silent. Her torso was a canvas of purple, black, and yellow. Bruises in various stages of healing covered her rib cage and abdomen. The clear imprint of a fist was visible on her right side. Compression bandages wrapped her midsection tightly. Dr. Kim's expression remained professionally neutral, but his eyes darkened. Min Woo's reaction was more subtle. He didn't gasp. Didn't curse. His face remained composed. Only his hands betrayed him, clenching briefly at his sides before deliberately relaxing. "These are several days old," Dr. Kim said, gently probing the worst areas. 2 fractured ribs, at minimum. Severe contusions across the torso. Possible kidney involvement. He looked up at Min Woo, a message passing between them. She should have been hospitalized immediately. "I couldn't," Nadine said. "Financially? Or was there another reason?" Dr. Kim asked. She didn't answer. The answer was in the bruises. Dr. Kim turned to Min Woo. "Someone should be held responsible for this." "They will be," Min Woo said quietly. The measured calm of his voice somehow more frightening than anger would have been. He moved closer to the bed, looking down at Nadine. His eyes were cold, calculating, furious, but none of that fury was directed at her. "Who did this to you?" he asked. "I fell." "Don't lie to me," he interrupted. "Not now." "Now, before I tell you what Nadine said next, and what Lee Min Woo did when he heard it, I need to ask you something. Are you subscribed? Because if you're watching this far and you're not subscribed, you're missing half the story. I post stories like this regularly. Stories about survival, justice, and people who refuse to break. Hit that subscribe button right now. It's free. It takes 1 second. And I promise you, what happens next is worth being here for. Also, drop a comment and let me know, have you ever had to hide pain just to survive? Let me know your story. I read every single comment. Now, back to Nadine. Because she's about to tell the most dangerous man in New York exactly what happened in that parking garage. Nadine looked up at Min Woo, calculating her options. She had so few left. The truth was dangerous. But lying to this man seemed more dangerous still. "David Morrison," she said finally, the name falling between them like a stone. Min Woo's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Recognition. Confirmation of a suspicion. "Tell me everything," he said, pulling a chair beside the bed. "From the beginning." Dr. Kim excused himself, promising to return with proper medication and supplies. The door closed softly behind him. Nadine began with the early incidents. The comments. The accidental touches. The elevator rides. The growing pattern of harassment that she documented methodically. Min Woo listened without interruption. His face was stone. Only his eyes showed anything, cold, calculating fury building with each detail. "I reported him to HR," she continued. Month 5. Patricia Winters took the report, but nothing happened, Min Woo finished for her. Worse than nothing. She told me to be careful around him. And somehow, he found out I'd reported him. Min Woo's jaw tightened slightly. What happened Wednesday night? She told him about the parking garage. The security guard's empty booth. David waiting behind the pillar. The accusation. The attack. The threat. "Tell anyone, and I'll finish the job," she quoted. She explained her decision to keep working. Showed him the math in simple terms. $28.41 in the bank. Rent due. No safety net. "And you've been working for 3 days with broken ribs," Min Woo said, his voice controlled but edged with something dangerous. "Standing through meetings. Cleaning floors. All while he watched." "I couldn't afford not to," she said simply. Min Woo stood. He moved to the window, looking out over the city he controlled. His reflection in the glass showed a man holding himself under tight restraint. He pulled out his phone and made a call, speaking rapidly in Korean. Nadine caught fragments. A name, Dante. Another name, David Morrison. The word for warehouse, Chango. A time frame. Something that might have been alive for now. When he hung up, he turned back to her. "You're under my protection now," he said with the absolute certainty of someone whose word was law. "You don't leave this building until I say so. Your apartment will be handled. Your position will be handled." His eyes held hers. "And David Morrison will be handled." "What are you going to do?" she asked. "Whatever is necessary." There was no hesitation, no moral struggle in his voice. Just cold certainty. "I can't ask you to." "You didn't ask," he interrupted. "I decided." He moved closer to the bed, and for the first time, his expression softened fractionally. "You should have come to me," he said, his voice lower. "I didn't know you knew I existed," she replied honestly. Something like surprise flickered across his face. "I've known you existed since your first day." The revelation hung in the air between them, unexplained. "Sleep," he said finally. "You're safe now. I have business to attend to." He left without further explanation, the door closing with quiet finality behind him. Nadine lay in a bed that cost more than a year of her rent. She was safe. She was healing. She was protected. But she also knew something else. She'd just become part of something much bigger than herself. And somewhere in the city, David Morrison was about to learn what happens when you touch something that belongs to the Dragon of Manhattan. He just didn't know it yet. The door closed behind Min Woo with a soft, expensive click. Nadine listened to the silence that followed, the kind that only exists in places built to keep the world out. Dr. Kim had left an hour earlier, after giving her a thorough examination, proper medication, and quiet instructions. 2 pills every 6 hours. No more. No less. Rest. Don't try to move unnecessarily. The medication worked better than anything she'd taken before. Real painkillers, not over-the-counter substitutes. The stabbing agony in her ribs had receded to a dull throb that allowed her to breathe almost normally. After an hour of lying perfectly still, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling, Nadine decided to explore. Moving carefully, she swung her legs over the edge of the bed. The floor was warm beneath her bare feet, heated, probably. Another luxury she'd never experienced. The bedroom opened to a hallway lined with artwork. Not corporate prints, but actual paintings. Landscapes. Modern abstracts. A traditional Korean ink drawing of mountains and water. The living area beyond was surprisingly normal. Expensive, yes, the furniture was clearly custom, the technology seamlessly integrated into the space. But it was lived in. Books stacked on side tables. A half-empty coffee mug on the kitchen counter. A jacket thrown over the back of a chair. Nadine moved to the bookshelf. Finance texts, expected. Business strategy, also expected. But then, Korean poetry. Philosophy. History. Several economics books she recognized from her graduate studies. Novels in both Korean and English. She picked up one, The Great Gatsby, and found notes in the margins. Handwritten observations in precise English. Thoughts about American wealth, appearance versus reality. Surprisingly thoughtful. On another shelf, family photographs. The same one from his office, grandparents, 2 boys. But others, too. A younger Min Woo in a university sweatshirt. Min Woo with an older man who shared his features, standing beside a shipping container with the Hanjin logo. Min Woo at what appeared to be a family dinner, surrounded by relatives, smiling in a way she'd never seen. Human moments. Real moments. Not just a monster. A person. It was somehow more unsettling than if she'd found weapons or evidence of criminality. On the nightstand by the bed, a note. Handwritten in black ink, the letters precise and controlled. Take the medication. Eat what's in the kitchen. Don't leave. I'll be back by midnight. MJ. She read it 3 times. The initials caught her attention. Not ML for Min Lee or LM for Lee Min Woo. Just MJ. As if he were a different person in private than in public. By 7 p.m., Nadine had eaten her first real meal in days. The kitchen was stocked with prepared containers, Korean food, restaurant quality. She heated something that looked like soup, found it was soft rice porridge with ginger and vegetables. Easy on the stomach. Healing food. By 8:30, she had showered carefully, using the massive bathroom with its rain shower and heated floors. Her bruises looked less angry under the warm water, though the damage remained clearly visible. By 9:15, she was back in bed, pain medication making her drowsy. For the first time in 3 days, she slept deeply, without the constant interruption of pain. She woke at 10:30 p.m., disoriented in the unfamiliar space. The city light sparkled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, reminding her where she was. Min Woo's suite. 53rd floor. Safe. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. 10:47 p.m. Unknown number, this is Dante. Boss wanted you to know, David Morrison has been dealt with. He'll live. But he won't work again. His uncle is off the board. The HR manager has been terminated. Rest. Boss will be back soon. Nadine stared at the message, reading it multiple times, processing the implications. Less than 12 hours. That's all it had taken for Min Woo to dismantle David Morrison's entire life. His career. His family protection. The system that had enabled him. She should have been horrified by the display of power, by whatever dealt with meant. Instead, she felt a dark satisfaction that scared her a little. The elevator chimed softly at 11:52 p.m. Nadine was in the living area, reading one of Min Woo's books, a collection of essays on market theory. She couldn't sleep after the text message, her mind too active despite the medication. The doors opened silently. Min Woo stepped into the suite. He looked different than he had earlier. His suit jacket was gone. His white shirt had the sleeves rolled up, revealing more of the tattoos that covered his forearms, dragons, traditional Korean symbols, patterns she couldn't identify. His hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd run his hands through it repeatedly. And on his knuckles, blood. Not much, just traces. Like he'd tried to clean up but missed spots. Their eyes met across the room. Neither spoke for a moment. Min Woo walked to the kitchen sink without a word. He turned on the water and began washing his hands methodically. Soap. Water. Careful attention to each finger, each knuckle. Nadine watched as the water ran pink, then clear. He dried his hands on a dish towel, his movements precise, almost ritualistic. You should be resting, he said finally, not turning around. I was hungry. She placed the book on the coffee table. Good. You need to eat. He turned to face her, leaning against the counter. Dr. Kim says you're significantly underweight. Nadine didn't respond to that. Instead, she asked the question that had been burning since the text message. Did you hurt him? Min Woo's expression didn't change. Yes. Badly? Yes. There was a long pause. Nadine processed this, searching her feelings for the appropriate response. The expected horror or disgust didn't come. Good, she said finally. Something flickered in Min Woo's eyes, surprise, interest. He studied her more carefully. You're not going to tell me violence isn't the answer? He asked. Would it matter if I did? No. Then why would I waste my breath? The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. He moved from the counter to the living area, taking a seat in the armchair across from her. You're not what I expected, he said. Neither are you. She met his gaze directly. Min Woo didn't respond immediately. He seemed to be considering something, weighing options. David Morrison will never assault another woman, he said finally. I made sure of it. What does that mean, exactly? It means he'll live with consequences. Physical ones. Legal ones. Financial ones. Min Woo's voice remained calm, matter-of-fact. Some lessons need to be permanent. Nadine should have been frightened. This was a confession of violence, of extrajudicial punishment. But all she felt was relief. Get some rest, Min Woo said, standing. We'll talk more tomorrow. He disappeared down the hallway to what she assumed was the master bedroom, leaving her alone with her thoughts. The scent of food woke Nadine the next morning. She opened her eyes to sunlight streaming through the windows. 8:37 a.m., according to the sleek clock on the nightstand. She'd slept nearly 9 hours, more than she had in months. Her ribs still ached, but the pain had subsided to a manageable level. She took her morning medication and carefully made her way to the kitchen. Min Woo stood at the stove, his back to her, stirring something in a pot. He wore black pants and a simple gray t-shirt that revealed more of his tattoos, intricate designs that covered both arms completely and disappeared beneath the fabric. You cook, she said, unable to hide her surprise. He glanced over his shoulder. I live alone. It's a necessary skill. I just assumed. I don't know. Personal chef? Room service? Sometimes, he acknowledged. But cooking helps me think. He gestured to the counter stools. Sit. You shouldn't be standing unnecessarily. She sat, watching him work. His movements in the kitchen were efficient, practiced. Nothing wasteful. Nothing for show. Juk, he said, placing a bowl in front of her. Rice porridge. My grandmother made it whenever anyone was sick or injured. The porridge was simple but flavorful, rice cooked until soft, seasoned with ginger, garlic, and something earthy she couldn't identify. Easy to eat. Gentle on the stomach. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Nadine couldn't remember the last time she'd shared a meal with someone else at a table. Months, probably. David Morrison will never work in this city again, Min Woo said finally. His uncle resigned from the board this morning. Effective immediately. Nadine's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. That quickly? When necessary, yes. And Mrs. Park? From HR? Terminated. Along with a formal review of all harassment claims filed in the past 5 years. He continued eating, as if discussing routine business. The documentation you kept was forwarded to our legal team. She set down her spoon. How did you know about my notebook? Min Woo met her eyes directly. Your apartment was searched. For your safety. Your notebook is secure. You went through my things. Her voice was controlled, but the violation was clear. I did what was necessary to protect you. You could have asked. You were unconscious. They stared at each other across the counter. A standoff of principles. Would you have said yes? He asked finally. She considered this honestly. Yes. Probably. Then I apologize for the method. Not the action. It wasn't quite the apology she wanted, but it was truthful. She appreciated that more than empty contrition. What happens now? She asked. You stay here until you're properly healed. Your apartment rent will be covered by Hanjin's Employee Assistance Program. Your position will change. Min Woo's tone was matter-of-fact, each point addressed efficiently. What will I be doing? Something that uses your actual skills. She frowned. I don't understand. You have a master's degree in economics. You notice patterns others miss. You documented harassment like a legal case. He gestured with his spoon. You're wasted pushing a mop. Afternoon sunlight filled the living room as Min Woo explained. There's a position in strategic operations. Data analysis. He sat across from her, a tablet in hand displaying a job description. It's been open for 3 months. Nadine scrolled through the details. The job was real, analyzing shipping data, identifying inefficiencies, developing strategies for route optimization. Exactly the kind of work she'd been trained to do. The salary was more than triple what she'd been making as cleaning staff. The work is real, Min Woo continued. The pay is appropriate. The position is legitimate. She looked up from the tablet. Why? Why what? Why offer me this? You don't know my qualifications beyond my degree. You don't know if I'm any good at this kind of analysis. Min Woo leaned forward slightly. I know you reorganized the cleaning supply system within your first month. Cut costs by 12%. No one asked you to. You just did it. She stared at him, surprised he knew about that. I know you read shipping manifests that passed through your hands and identified a container utilization issue on the Shanghai route that our logistics team missed for 6 months. How could you possibly? I know you did all this while hiding bruised ribs and working a job that was beneath you. Min Woo's eyes were intense, focused. I'm not buying you, Nadine. I'm recognizing value. The offer was everything she'd wanted since graduation. A real job. Using her education. Financial stability. But she hesitated. If I take this, people will talk. People always talk. They'll say I slept my way into it. They can say what they want. You and I will know the truth. And what is the truth? She asked, watching him carefully. The truth is that you're brilliant, you're wasted, and I need someone who sees what you see. The words hung between them. Not flattery. An assessment. Cold and accurate. I won't be owned, she said finally. I don't want to own you. I want to work with you. And if I want to leave? Then you leave. No consequences. No threats. Why should I believe that? Min Woo's expression was steady. Because I've never lied to you. It was true, she realized. Frightening in its accuracy. He hadn't lied. He'd been brutal, honest, direct, but never dishonest. I need time to think, she said. Take all the time you need. He stood, leaving the tablet with the job offer on the coffee table. The position will be available when you're ready. Here's something important about power dynamics. Real power doesn't need to coerce. It can afford to wait. Min Woo could have demanded anything. He held all the cards. He'd protected her, housed her, destroyed her enemy. Instead, he gave her a choice. A real one. With real options. That's the difference between a man who takes power and a man who understands it. Nadine was starting to understand the difference, too. Nadine couldn't sleep. The medication helped with pain but left her mind strangely alert. Her thoughts circled around the job offer, the events of the past 3 days, the man whose suite she was currently occupying. She left the guest room, moving carefully through the darkened living area. A slice of light caught her attention, the balcony door, slightly ajar. Min Woo stood outside, hands resting on the glass railing, looking out over the city. The Manhattan skyline sparkled below, a galaxy of human-made stars against the darkness. She hesitated, then pushed the door open further. Can't sleep, he asked without turning around. Too much to think about. He nodded, still facing the view. She joined him at the railing, keeping a respectful distance. The night air was cool against her skin. Sounds from 53 floors below reached them faintly, car horns, sirens, the constant hum of a city that never truly slept. "Why do you care what happens to me?" she asked, the question that had been gnawing at her all day. "I told you. I noticed you. You notice everyone. That's your job. I notice everyone. I care about very few." She turned to look at his profile, lit by the city lights. "Why me?" He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different. Less controlled. More honest. "Because you survived in a place that breaks people. Because you documented instead of despairing. Because you fought back in that garage even though you lost." "How do you know I fought back?" "You had defensive wounds." Dr. Kim noted them. Silence stretched between them, comfortable rather than awkward. "Most people give up," he said finally. "You didn't." The words weren't romantic. There was no hint of desire or attraction in his tone. Just recognition. Respect. Nadine turned back to the view, considering the city below, all those lights representing lives and struggles she would never know. "I'm going to take the job," she said. "I know." "How do you know?" "Because you're practical. And it's the practical choice." She almost smiled. Almost. "Good night, Mr. Lee." "Good night, Nadine." She went back to the guest room. He stayed on the balcony, looking over the city he controlled. Neither of them knew it yet, but something had started that night. Not love. Not yet. Something more dangerous. Understanding. Day 4. The bruises had begun their slow transformation. Black to purple. Purple to blue. Blue to a sickly yellow-green that spread across Nadine's torso like watercolor bleeding on paper. Dr. Kim pressed gently against her ribcage. His touch was clinical, practiced, careful. "The fractures are healing well," he said, making notes on his tablet. "No signs of displacement." "When can I go back to work?" Nadine asked. Dr. Kim glanced up, one eyebrow raised slightly. "Most people ask when they can leave the hospital. You ask when you can return to work." "Most people have savings accounts," Nadine replied. "Your position is secure," Dr. Kim reminded her. "Mr. Lee has made that clear." She didn't respond to that. The new position, junior analyst, strategic operations, still felt like a dream. Something that could evaporate like morning fog. "Desk work can begin in 1 week," Dr. Kim said finally. "No lifting. No extended standing. Regular breaks to move and stretch." Nadine nodded, carefully rebut-toning her shirt. "Thank you, doctor." After he left, she found Min Woo in the kitchen, reading something on his tablet while drinking coffee. "Clean bill of health?" he asked without looking up. "1 more week of rest. Then desk work only." He nodded, still focused on whatever he was reading. "The paperwork for your position transfer is ready. You can sign it whenever you feel up to it." "I'll sign it now." That made him look up. Something like approval flickered across his face before his expression returned to its usual calm. He pushed a folder across the counter toward her. Nadine opened it, scanning the documents inside. Employment contract. Benefits package. Confidentiality agreement. Her new title printed in clean, official type, Nadine Usher, Junior Analyst, Strategic Operations. Salary, $85,000 per year. She kept her face neutral, but her heart raced. More than triple her cleaning wages. Enough to actually live instead of just survive. "You'll be on floor 48, Min Woo said as she signed. Not executive level, but close. Small office, private, window. "People will talk," she said, not looking up from the paperwork. "They already are." Of course they were. The cleaning lady who collapsed into the CEO's arms. The mysterious promotion that followed. The fact that she hadn't been seen for days. She could imagine the theories. Affair. Blackmail. Scandal. How do I handle it? She asked, signing the last page. Competence silences rumors, Min-woo replied. Give them nothing to work with. Nadine closed the folder, sliding it back to him. Is that how you handle gossip? No. The corner of his mouth twitched. I handle gossip by being more frightening than whatever they could say about me. That's not an option for me. You'd be surprised. He took the folder. Your things have been brought from your apartment. What you need immediately. The rest is being stored. I should go back to my place soon, she said. Once I'm cleared. Min-woo was already checking his phone, attention diverted to some business matter. No rush. Your rent is covered for 3 months. I didn't ask you to. Employee Assistance Program, he interrupted. Available to any staff member with medical needs. You're not receiving special treatment. They both knew that was a lie. But it was a lie that preserved her dignity, that gave her space to accept help without feeling owned by it. Thank you, she said. He nodded once, still looking at his phone. Your new badge will be ready tomorrow. Access to systems, personnel portal, company resources. It was all happening so fast. So efficiently. As if her life were being reorganized by some invisible force. That force was sitting across from her, calmly drinking coffee. By day 8, they had developed a routine. Nadine woke at 6:30, showered, dressed in the new clothes she'd ordered online, simple, professional, affordable despite Min-woo's offer to take care of it. She made coffee, setting out 2 mugs on the kitchen counter. Min-woo emerged from the master bedroom at precisely 7:15, already dressed in whatever suit he'd selected for the day. He poured coffee for both of them. They didn't speak much in the mornings, just existed in the same space, preparing for their separate days. Except Min-woo wasn't going to the office. Not every day. He was working from the suite. For her. Because of her. He never said it directly, but she knew. She would hear him on calls throughout the day. Sometimes in English, sometimes in Korean, occasionally switching between the two mid-conversation. His voice changed depending on who he was speaking to. With business associates, he was cool, direct, uncompromising. With people who seemed to be friends or family, his tone softened, became more natural. She learned to gauge his mood by the rhythm of his footsteps as he paced during difficult conversations. Quick, sharp steps meant irritation. Slow, measured pacing meant he was considering something complex. On day 9, she found the courage to ask about his tattoos. Traditional, she asked over dinner, gesturing to the intricate patterns visible on his forearms where he'd rolled up his sleeves. He glanced at his own skin as if seeing it for the first time. Some. The dragon is traditional, it was my grandfather's symbol and soul. The others, personal. When did you start getting them? 22. When my father died. He served more of the bulgogi he'd prepared. Heart attack. Sudden. I had to take over the company. You were very young. Too young, he agreed. I made mistakes. What kind of mistakes? His eyes met hers. The kind that can't be undone. She understood the boundary. Respected it. Changed the subject. Tell me about your thesis, he said later as they sat in the living room. Economic pattern recognition in emerging markets, correct? Nadine looked up from her book, surprised. You read my thesis? The abstract. I found it in the Howard University Digital Archives. You researched me. Of course. He said it without apology or embarrassment. I research everyone who interests me. And I interest you. Clearly. He gestured to the space around them. I don't invite many cleaning staff to recover in my home. She should have been offended. Instead, she found herself explaining her thesis. The patterns she'd identified in developing economies. The predictive models she'd created. The implications for investment strategies. Min Woo listened, really listened, asking questions that showed he understood the concepts, challenging certain assumptions, offering insights from his own experience. "You should have been hired for your brain years ago," he said when she finished. The job market didn't agree. "The job market is stupid." She almost smiled at that. On day 10, she finally asked the question that had been hovering between them. "What exactly is Hanjin?" "Really?" They were eating dinner, a Korean stew he'd prepared that filled the kitchen with rich, spicy aromas. His chopsticks paused halfway to his mouth. He set them down carefully. "A logistics company with additional interests." "Illegal interests?" His eyes met hers, steady and unflinching. "I won't lie to you. But I also won't burden you with details." "Is it dangerous? Being around you?" "Not if you're under my protection." "And if I'm not?" "You are." His voice was calm but absolute. "That's not changing." She nodded slowly, accepting this for now. Not pressing further. Some questions were better left in the space between what was said and what was understood. "I'm cooking tonight," Nadine announced on day 12. Min Woo looked up from his laptop. "You should be resting." "I've been resting for almost 2 weeks. I can stand long enough to make dinner." She was already moving around the kitchen, opening cabinets. "What do you have against American food, anyway?" "Nothing. I just prefer Korean." "Well, tonight you're getting Southern. My grandmother's recipes." He watched her with quiet interest as she moved through his kitchen. She'd learned the layout over the past weeks, knew where everything was. It felt strangely comfortable, cooking in this space that wasn't hers. She made mac and cheese from scratch, real cheese sauce, not the boxed kind. Collard greens with smoked turkey. Cornbread that filled the kitchen with the scent of honey and butter. When they sat down to eat, Min Woo approached the food with the same careful attention he gave everything. "This is better than any restaurant," he said after tasting each dish. "My grandmother would like you for saying that." The words escaped before she could consider them. Too familiar. Too personal. But Min Woo just nodded. "Tell me about her." "She raised me while my mom worked. Taught me to cook, to iron properly, to speak to adults, to stand up straight." Nadine smiled at the memory. "She passed when I was 16. And your mother?" "Still in Baltimore. Works at Johns Hopkins Hospital. Administrative." "You haven't called her." It wasn't a question. "And tell her what?" Nadine asked. "Hi Mom, I'm living with a billionaire CEO after I was attacked at work. Tell her you're safe." That's all she'd want to know. The simplicity of the statement struck her. Of course that's what her mother would want to know. Not the details. Just that her daughter was okay. "You close with your family?" she asked, redirecting. Min Woo's expression remained neutral. "My mother lives in Seoul. We speak monthly. My brother is in London. Business school." "You're protective of him." His eyebrow raised slightly. "Why do you say that?" "Your voice changes when you mention him." Softer. Min Woo considered this. "Gene is different from me. Less hardened. I'd like him to stay that way." "You want to protect him from the family business?" "Parts of it." He didn't elaborate. Didn't need to. The next day, Nadine called her mother. "Baby girl." I was starting to worry. 3 weeks and barely a text. "I'm sorry, Mama. Things have been complicated." "Complicated how?" "You sick? You in trouble?" "I'm okay," Nadine said, choosing her words carefully. "Got a new position at work. Better money. Using my degree finally. About time. That's wonderful news. Where are you living? Same place? For now, Nadine hedged. I'll be looking for something better soon. They talked for 20 minutes. Nadine kept the conversation focused on her mother, on Baltimore, on anything but the details of her current situation. When they hung up, her mother's last words lingered. You sound different. Lighter. Maybe I am, Nadine had replied. That evening, she found Min-woo on the balcony, watching the sunset paint the Manhattan skyline in shades of gold and pink. She joined him, standing closer than she would have a week ago. Thank you, she said. For everything. You don't need to thank me. I know. I wanted to anyway. He turned to look at her. Something shifted in his expression, a softening, a consideration, something she couldn't quite read. For a moment, she thought he might reach out, might touch her. He looked away first. You should get some rest, he said. Work starts next week. Day 14. Nadine stood in front of the bathroom mirror, adjusting the collar of her new blouse. Navy blue. Simple. Professional. Purchased with her own money despite Min-woo's repeated offers. Her reflection showed someone she barely recognized. The bruises on her face had faded completely. Her natural hair was styled in a neat twist. She wore light makeup, foundation, mascara, subtle lip color. She looked like the person she'd always meant to be. The economist. The analyst. The professional. Dr. Kim had given his approval the day before. Ribs healed enough for desk work. No heavy lifting for another month. Thank you, doctor. He'd paused at the door, something uncharacteristically gentle in his expression. Take care of yourself, Miss Usher. And him. She hadn't responded to that curious comment. Min-woo was already gone when she left the suite. He'd departed early, saying he had meetings, but she suspected he wanted to give her space to enter the building on her own terms. To establish herself without his shadow. Her new ID badge felt strange against her chest. Nadine Usher, Strategic Operations. The photo was recent, taken 3 days ago. She looked serious, composed, professional. The elevator to the 48th floor required her badge for access. The doors opened to a corridor of glass-walled offices. Several people glanced up as she passed. She felt their eyes, their curiosity, their assessment. Head up. Eyes forward. Competence silences rumors. Her office was at the end of the hall. Small but private. A glass door with her name on it. A window overlooking Midtown. A desk with a computer far more powerful than anything she'd ever owned. She touched the nameplate. Nadine Usher. Solid. Real. Settling in. Min-woo stood in the doorway. Proper. Professional. No indication in his posture or expression that she'd spent the past 2 weeks living in his home. Still processing, she admitted. Take your time. There's no rush. He turned to leave, then paused. His hand brushed against hers as he passed. A brief contact. Deliberate? Accidental? She couldn't tell. Then he was gone, and she was alone in her new office, with her new life, her new beginning. Here's what nobody tells you about second chances. They don't feel triumphant. They feel terrifying. Because you know, intimately, how quickly everything can fall apart. Nadine stood in her new office and felt both possibilities, the future she'd hoped for, and the fear that it could all disappear. But she also felt something else. Ready. Nadine Usher sat at her new desk, in her new office, in the building where she'd once pushed a mop. Outside her window, Manhattan sprawled beneath her. On her computer, data sets waited to be analyzed. And somewhere on the floor above her, Lee Min-woo was watching her name appear on the employee system, finally where it belonged. But this wasn't a fairy tale. And Nadine knew it. The real tests were just beginning. The Shanghai shipping route data glowed on Nadine's monitor, numbers and patterns that most people would find meaningless. To her, they told a story. 3 days into her new position, and she'd already found it, the inefficiency that had been bleeding money for months. Container utilization on return routes hovering at 78% capacity. Partially empty ships crossing the Pacific, burning fuel, paying crew, collecting minimal revenue. She compiled the data into a clear report. Added 3 potential solutions with cost-benefit analyses. Sent it to her direct supervisor, James Chen, not expecting much. First-week employees didn't usually get attention. Usher. James appeared in her doorway 2 hours later, holding her printed report. This is good. Really good. Thank you. I send it upstairs. Meeting in 30 minutes. Bring your laptop. 30 minutes later, she sat in a conference room with 4 senior executives and Min Woo. He gave her a single nod when she entered, professional, distant, no hint of their shared living arrangement. Walk us through this, James said, gesturing to her report now projected on the screen. Nadine stood, hyper-aware of every eye on her, especially Min Woo's. She began explaining her findings, her voice steady despite the nerves fluttering in her stomach. The issue isn't the route itself. It's the balance. We're shipping full containers to Shanghai and returning with partial loads. If we implement secondary pickups at Busan or Yokohama on the return routes, we can increase utilization to at least 93%. She showed her calculations. The potential savings, $218,000 monthly. $2.6 million annually. When she finished, the room was quiet. She could feel the assessment, the recalculation happening behind their eyes. Implementation timeline, asked the operations director. 2 weeks for pilot. Full implementation in 6 if the pilot succeeds. Min Woo spoke for the first time. Do it. Chen, give her whatever resources she needs. Just like that. No questions about her experience. No doubts about her qualifications. Just recognition of value. As they filed out of the room, she heard one executive whisper to another, maybe she's not just here because of Lee. Min Woo, walking ahead, heard it too. His back stiffened slightly, but he said nothing. Let them talk, Nadine thought. The numbers speak louder. Day 17. Nadine's office had acquired the lived-in feel of a space that belonged to her. Reports stacked neatly on the corner of her desk. A small plant James had given her after her Shanghai route proposal was approved. Her Howard University mug filled with pens. The whispers hadn't stopped entirely, but they'd changed tone. Less about how she'd gotten the job, more about what she'd accomplished since arriving. The Shanghai route modification was already showing results. She'd been invited to 3 more meetings, her input actually requested. She'd earned this. Not because of Min Woo's protection. Because she was good. Their professional interactions remained strictly appropriate. Brief meetings about her analyses. Formal emails copied to relevant team members. In the office, he treated her like any other employee, which was exactly what she wanted. Proof that he respected her independence, her competence, her boundaries. The private moments were different. Evenings in the suite had developed their own rhythm. Dinner together, sometimes takeout when both worked late, sometimes something Min Woo prepared while she finished reports on her laptop at the kitchen counter. They still maintained separate bedrooms. Still kept physical distance. But their conversations stretched longer into the evening. The silences between topics grew comfortable rather than awkward. Something was building between them. Something neither named. It was the small moments that accumulated, like sand grains forming dunes. His hand brushing against hers when passing coffee in the morning. Eye contact that lasted 1 beat too long when she made a point he agreed with. The way he listened when she spoke, genuinely listened, with an intensity that made her feel both seen and exposed. By day 19, Nadine could no longer pretend she wasn't attracted to him. The realization didn't come as a dramatic epiphany, just a quiet acknowledgement of something that had been true for longer than she'd admitted. But attraction wasn't simple. Not with Min Woo. Not with their history. She lay awake in her bed, staring at the ceiling, sorting through her feelings like data points. Was this gratitude? He'd saved her. Protected her. Given her a job and a place to stay. Was it proximity? Living in someone's space created false intimacy. She knew that. Was it power? He controlled an empire. Commanded respect and fear. Had resources she could barely comprehend. Or was it something real? Something that would exist without all those other factors? She didn't know how to tell the difference. And that terrified her more than anything David Morrison had ever done. Day 20 brought a change. Min Woo was suddenly absent. A text at 6 p.m., working late. Don't wait for dinner. The suite felt strangely empty without him. She ate alone, worked on her laptop, went to bed early. Day 21, another late night. Another brief, professional text. No explanation. Something had shifted, and she didn't understand what or why. She left the office at 7 p.m., crossing the lobby toward the private elevator that would take her to the suite. A familiar figure stepped into her path. Miss Usher. Dante, Min Woo's right-hand man. The one who had dealt with David Morrison. Tall, Korean-American, impeccably dressed, with eyes that missed nothing. Dante, she acknowledged. Is there something I can help you with? Just checking that everything is satisfactory with your new position. They both knew that wasn't why he'd approached her. It's fine,